So welcome, everyone. After many years of request, I'm actually doing a podcast finally. And I have Ella here with me, who's been working with me on astrology, been a student and helping and assisting me on many different things. So she's wonderful. She helps me as a co-host. And she, I think, has some questions for me, doesn't she?
She sure does.
She sure does. All right. Let's hear them.
First, she's going to say hello to everyone. And I do have a couple questions for you. The first one is about 2020, everything that we went through in 2020. It's just been so insane, obviously, right? Everybody knows this.
That's an understatement. Yeah.
No secret there. But Is there anything in the astrology as to why this happened?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. I mean, I have been talking about this on podcasts, radio shows, and various different media for years. The biggest thing that's happened is we had two major events. One is a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which is exceedingly powerful. These are not totally unique. They happen about every 38 to 40 years, something like that. It's not exact, but close to that. But every time they do, there's major changes in the world. What made this so unique was it also joined a 240-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn together. And these are called great conjunctions and mutation conjunctions. Now, I know that all sounds a little complex, but it's actually not when you get your mind around it. So what happened is COVID broke out exactly on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. I've been talking about this for years. Everyone's saying, Jeff, what do you think of the Mayan calendar? And I said, not a single thing. I said, I really would say 2020 is it. And the reason why, not only did we have the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, but we also had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which happened on the winter solstice just about, again, almost exactly 11 months later. See, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happened right when COVID broke out in January of 2020. Right. And I mean, we all know what that was like. You literally had, sagebrush blowing in the streets. It just was.
It was like that everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah. Absolutely
huge. And then following that, and then we had all those riots and all the crazy stuff, the George Floyd, the dissension, everything else. And then, of course, we know what happened at the winter solstice of 2020. And there following, we had all the issues with the election and so much dissension and political mayhem. Moreover, we have seen, and this is what's really happened, is we've seen fascism really come into play. And both sides of the fence are saying it. I'm not here. I don't, care which political party anyone is. Globally, we have seen this happen. Right. It is mayhem. It's like somebody threw a grenade in the room and everybody's just, fighting and scrambling and pulling shrapnel out of their foreheads. Yeah. We have seen so much craziness. We're seeing the petrochemical industry shut down. We are seeing the food shortages, the shortages everywhere. We are also seeing political mayhem and a lot of division here. All this racial stuff is coming in. Roe versus Wade. So it's been insane. It's been virtual insanity. And moreover, we're seeing, look at the war in Ukraine and everything else. And we're also, now we're hearing threats of nuclear war. I mean, this is insane.
So why is all this happening? Like what?
Again, fascism struck in on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. See, and you have to remember, let me explain something, because this is very, very important. Okay, the 9/11 happened on the Saturn-Pluto opposition. Now, we all know the buildings came down like sparklers from jet fuel. Can't say anything about that. And then, of course, Building 7. But look at the effects of 9/11. That brought us nearly 20 years of war in the Middle East. It brought us, most importantly, the Patriot Act, which completely changed the total way governments can look at anyone causing dissension and terrorism. And you can be declared a terrorist like that. In fact, some of that stuff's actually coming into play right now. So what's really important to get from all this is people say, yeah, but that was back in 2020. Now it's 2022 going on 2023. No, the effects of these energies last for years and years and years and years. We're going to see the effects of not only COVID, but the effects that COVID brought on the world in many different ways. I don't want to get into all the stuff on the vaccines and everything else. We'll get banned. But the bottom line is what we're seeing here is a global effect that is affecting everything from climate change to people, shutting down food supplies, tyranny. It's a war of globalism. A war of globalism.
Yeah.
And fascism and nationalism. It's literally the war between the globalists and the nationalists. Is that simple?
Absolutely. And it feels like we're just all trapped in it.
That's exactly right. We are trapped in it. We're fish in a barrel. Mm-hmm. And the modern era, see, that's another thing I've been saying, is the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction happened on the winter solstice in an air trine in the tropical zodiac. Right on the winter solstice. I mean, it was exact. It was kind of eerie exact. Yeah. So that makes it exceedingly powerful. What does it mean in plain English? Everybody goes, okay, great. What does it mean? Well, it means a high-tech era. It's going to get like the Jetsons, literally. It is going to become so high-tech. We're seeing genetics explode, things happening all over in artificial intelligence, on and on and on. Energies, all this. We're going to see the world explode. Already, look what's...
We're already seeing it.
It's already seeing it. I mean,
shifts are starting.
Look at the world in the last couple of years.
And it's been coming. It's been coming.
It's been coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like the Industrial Revolution. And interestingly enough, this relates to the founding of this country. Why? There was a fire conjunction. Now, when I say fire, it was well known all the way back to the flood of Noah that Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in certain elements. Now, when I say elements, that means earth, air, fire, and water, which also equals the four archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. This stuff gets really sacred when you start getting into it. And what's fascinating is in 1762, right during the French-Indian War, there was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which really ushered in the Industrial Revolution. And that happened very close to what? The spring equinox. So very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. And I think what's important to get from this is that changed the world. Well, the one we just had in 2020, to answer your question, it's changing the world. Yeah. The world as we know it is vanished. The past is gone and the future is now hit us. And that's happening always, but it really is marker points when these astrological energies kick in. Yeah. And here's another bit of interesting stuff. The United States is going through traumatic stuff that it's never, ever gone through since its founding. And just to reiterate, that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, George Washington was a 22-year-old man, and this was in the history books before they swiped it out in the early 30s. And that is, there was a legend that he was fired upon by the French and the Indians so many times. Two horses were shot out from underneath him. Almost every officer that was on the field with him was killed except one or two. And they said there were bullet holes in his coat that should have went right through him. And yet he lived. He didn't have a mark on him. And later, an Indian chief had said to him, you have the spirit of a great warrior, and you are going to conquer and lead and create a great empire very soon. And he did, the United States of America. So why am I bringing this up? Well, look at where we're at. Literally, we just had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and we're about ready to see the America that we know either dry up and blow away and become a state of either socialism or out-and-out communism, or it's going to be the phoenix rising out of the ashes.
Well, how does that look? I mean, we're praying for the latter, obviously, but how does that look in terms of when the astrology speaks to it?
Well, I'm glad you're bringing that up, because the United States is going through some really traumatic stuff that it hasn't had since the Civil War. There, in the 1860s, there was a Neptune-Mars square and a Neptune-Mars opposition. Now, plain English on that one, that's where they urinate down your back and tell you it's raining. And that's, pardon the expression, but that's what it kind of is. It's very full of subterfuge, lying, trickery, all this stuff. And that's what happened right before the Civil War. If you look back at Lincoln and all the stuff that went on, a lot of political mayhem was going on there. And the Civil War broke out right after that. Well, guess what? Because the United States is 246 years old, we are going through that both in the tropical and sidereal zodiacs. The sidereal happens a little bit later, but we've been going through that ever since 2020. And guess what? It doesn't complete until 2024. Just a theory for you folks. These new one world order folks are very well aware of astrology. The secret societies.
Oh, you know they are.
They're very well. Very, very, very well aware.
Yeah. The timing of everything is too exact.
It's so accurate, it's creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, when you really look into these events, the preparation and things that happen in and around them are just a little eerie to just be happenstance.
Yeah.
So, it's...
Definitely.
And of course, we'll be called conspiracy theorists, but it sure lines up with the astrology to the T.
Well, there you go. And what about the midterm elections? What do we?
Well, see, here's what's really interesting about that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to share a screen here for a second here. And what I'm going to do is bring up the United States Sibley chart. And we call it the Sibley chart because it was named after Ebenezer Sibley. And Ebenezer Sibley was a Mason who purported to have said that the bells in the church started ringing and they dipped their pens into the inkwells right around 5:10 p.m. Now, some astrologers do dispute that, but I find it's a pretty accurate chart. And for the stuff that we're looking at, it really isn't going to matter because we're essentially looking at the outer transits. Well, there's an eclipse related to the answer of your question that's coming up this October 25th. Right. It's a very powerful, it's actually an eclipse that began in the year 1049, believe it or not. And it ends in the year 2093. And people get confused about that. They go, wow, how could that be? Well, let me show you something. There is a very interesting thing when we get into eclipses. Eclipses are very, 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 very mysterious. And I'll show you here a diagram if I can fish it out and find it right here. This is my favorite diagram to show. So when the sun and the moon and the earth align, we get eclipses, right? We either get a new moon eclipse or a full moon eclipse. Well, the nodes, which are these little horseshoes, are known as the head and the tail of the dragon. Now, why are they called that? That's an interesting thing. Well, that's because these series of eclipses start at the North Pole or the South Pole, and they serpentine around the globe over a period of up to 2,000 years. The average ones are about 1,000 to 1,500 years. So they have a very mysterious karmic energy. And I think it's beyond what astrologers and psychics and intuitives can fully discern, because this really has a lot to do with the souls on this earth, the collective souls at the time. And so what's happening is we're going to get this powerful eclipse right before the election. Well, what is that all about? Well, here, if we go back to the United States birth chart, and I actually select the date of the eclipse, which, by the way, I could have had this prepared, but I didn't. Anyways, you can see these are the dates right here. And the eclipse actually happens over Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals, right around, I think it's 6:29 a.m. Approximately. So we'll just roll it up to that exact time, 6:29 a.m., right? We just need to get close. It's 49. It's actually 6:49 a.m. is technically when the eclipse happens. Well, you can see this is very powerful because this is the United States birth chart on the inner box. The outer box is the transits. You can see transits right here. So the eclipse is always when the sun joins the moon or the moon is opposed to the sun, right? We won't see it here, by the way. The eclipse will only be observable in certain areas of North Africa, through the Middle East, up into parts of India and Russia. That's the only, so you won't see it here in the in the Western Hemisphere. So the bottom line is, what does this all mean? Well, it's happening on the United States air trine. And you can see this is Libra, which is air. This is Aquarius, which is air. And this is Gemini. Well, notice it's hitting all these planets in the United States birth chart. Plain English, this eclipse is volatile. It's very pushy. And it actually has what we call a Pluto-Mars opposition in it. And there's also a midpoint here with Uranus. So expect the general nature of this eclipse is forceful taking of power. It's where people abruptly take power. And this kind of relates to some of the things I've been hearing. I mean, we all know that they want to take Trump out of power completely. They either want to put a bullet in his head, or they want to arrest him, or they want to stop him in any way from going forward. Now, again, here we go. It's the war between the globalists and the nationalists. And the George Carlin might have had it right. Forget the politicians. You have owners. I really don't believe this is going on just between the politicians. I think this war may be a lot bigger in higher places we're not hearing about on the media and the news. And this eclipse is very likely to precipitate some very intense, violent action.
Well, we've also got that Mars going retrograde at the end of the month, right?
Thank you for bringing that up. That's exactly right. Mars also follows going retrograde on the same air trine. You can actually see Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra are air. That's the trine. This is very different type of astrology. This is actually Nadi astrology, which is very, very ancient. And it looks at astrology much different than traditional Western stuff. But the forces on this are exceedingly powerful. The other thing that's exceedingly critical, watch this right here. This is called a graphic ephemeris. The United States had its first Pluto return right there. The little circle at the lineup is a conjunction. Started right in February, right when Putin went into Ukraine and all this money started pouring in. This July 10th was the second hit. And the third and final hurrah in the tropical zodiac is right there, this December. So plain English, we're going to see some really powerful forces on the United States. And the Supreme Court just came back into session. Literally today. I think it's today or the next couple of days. And there's all kinds of things on the plate with that about some voting issues and other things. So we're going to see.
It's going to blow up.
It could.
Seems, yeah.
And then you got Russia warming up the tactical nuclear weapons, and then we are warming up other ones over here. So it's a very, very dangerous time. Very dangerous. Meanwhile, Biden and the administration are busy turning off every single spigot to the petrochemical industry, which, I think is exceedingly dangerous. I don't want to give my own personal opinions here, but the astrology supports, if there was ever a time that dissension and mayhem would happen, we're in it right now. We are either going to find this country does not exist the way we know it when this all gets done, or we will be the phoenix rising out of the ashes. The problem is, in order to be that phoenix rising out of the ashes, you might have to get ashes first. So we'll see. I hope that's wrong. This, by the way, is a tropical system, and a lot of astrologers are at kind of war again with which zodiac is more accurate, the tropical or the sidereal.
Well,
and,
in a sense, right?
They're both accurate. That's exactly right. See, the Western astrology uses the tropical zodiac, and to the flat earthers, I say it's still a celestial model, and it's based on the equinoxes and the solstice points. Whereas Vedic astrology uses something known as the precession of the equinoxes, meaning it takes into account that every 72 years, our solar system is rocketing around a central sun, somewhere just a little bit less than 500 million miles an hour. NASA says it's somewhere around 483,000 miles an hour. So if one thing's for sure, the fixed stars do precess about that rate. So it's just a little over a lifetime, or a little under a lifetime, I should say, average lifetime. So very, very powerful stuff. So why am I bringing this up? Well, here's why. If we come back here, and we do what we call precession correction. That's that little button I just clicked is going to correct the United States birth chart for a sidereal correction. Now the rabbit hole gets deeper. Look at the Neptune square Mars, which we just finished in tropical, actually starts again in the sidereal. It's going on right now. It finishes this March, and the Pluto return for the United States sidereally starts when? Right in 2024. How about that?
Of course.
Of course. So, folks, I was hoping we could put our helmets and life preservers away, but it's not looking like that quite yet. Again, hang on to your hat.
2024 is going to be rocky.
This is a roller coaster ride, folks. A roller coaster ride. All my life, I remember when Kennedy got killed. I was actually in Washington, D.C. in 1968 when Martin Luther King was killed. And oh my God, it was just mayhem. And people were so angry as they really should have been. But anyhow, the point is, I'll never forget the feeling, the energy.
Yeah.
Personally, I think we're about to see stuff we've never seen. It's going to get very interesting. And let's pray and hope that we have some saving grace. Now, to that issue, because a lot of people say, well, it's all we get is bad news, right? Well, no, not really. I actually hopefully have some good news here. I'm about to show you that. And what it is, this is very interesting.
Jupiter helping out?
It is. It's about Jupiter. See, and I love bringing up Jupiter. The reason why I like bringing up Jupiter is if you look here, Jupiter is really all the glyphs of the planets. I have some good links on my website about this if anybody wants to pursue it. But all the glyphs of the planets, the ancient ones, come from the circle of the sun, which is God's seed, the crescent, which is the crucible, and of course the cross. In fact, this is mirrored very much in creation. We all know, right? Dad puts the seed in mom's womb, right? We nurture and then we exit mom's womb onto the four elements on the cross of matter of the earth, right? So Jupiter is always the divinity. It's the crescent of the moon over the cross. And even the astronomers have to agree it's the largest planet in the solar system. It's huge. It has a powerful, powerful influence on the celestial energies. So the bottom line is, why am I bringing that up? Well, let's take a look here. In the Nadi, and you got to forgive my chicken scratch here because this is all done by hand. I don't have a computer program that does this. This is the United States progressions here. And you can see just this July 4th, Saturn, these are called the Saturn progressions, which is karma. Saturn just began to transit the Sun, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars air trine over the moon. And of course, that's where that eclipse happens, right? Coming right up on the 25th. But even though we're in the midst of a category 5 political storm, I think what we're going to see here is Jupiter tips the scales because right there, that's 246.5 years old. The United States just turned 246 years old on the July 4th. And right there, you can see at 246 and a half years, we'll put 6 months onto July 4th. And where are you? It comes right out to about January. See? So, or you could say, is it December 6th? No, it'd be January 6th or 7th, something like that. No, January 4th. So, I mean, give or take, that's going to tip the scales here. Now, a lot of people are saying, the midterm elections are going to tip towards, the GOP party. I think there's going to be a lot of still manipulation going on, a lot of subterfuge. There could be enough chaos that even we could see some real trouble with the election. And I would not be surprised with that, with Mars going retrograde and also the eclipse point aggravating this very powerful air trine in the United States. Also, too, of mention, this is very, very important. And I almost forgot. The United States is also next year commencing something known as Sati Sate.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And people will say to me, Sati what? Sati Sate is a strange word. You can see I'm putting it here on the screen. Sati Sate is the 7.5 year period where Saturn, the planet of karma, transits the sign before over or during and after the moon. Well, you can see the United States has had, this is the United States birth chart on the inner box, and the outer is the transits. Well, you can see Saturn has been over the south node of the United States for literally the last couple of years. And it certainly has felt like it. Saturn and the moon south node, known as K2, get along about as good as oil and water do. They just don't mix. It's very troublesome. Right. Next year, starting this January, Saturn transits over the top of the moon. And people might say, okay, great, Jeff, what does it mean? Well, Saturn acts like a capacitor. It stores energies and it releases it. And when it transits the moon, got to look at the glyph of Saturn. It's the cross over the crescent of the moon. So it literally releases energy. It's like taking leads on a capacitor and grounding them. It releases the stored energy within it. And that's what happens when it transits the moon. So we've got a cocktail here that's very, very powerful. By the way, Saturn transits the moon in any chart, whether it's a country or a person's birth chart, about every 28 and a half years. So this is not unique. What is unique is what we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, and that is the confluence of the Saturn-Pluto fascism, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and the incredibly powerful stuff, the Pluto return and the Neptune subterfuge stuff that's going on over the United States. All in plain English means this is like stacking, about 2 tons on the back of a camel that's supposed to support 800 pounds. Sooner or later it goes kaboom. So this is where we're at. The wheels are bending out, if you will, metaphorically, because there's a lot of pressure here for some very, very volatile things to happen. And geez, why would that be? Let's see, the border's being flooded. We have people flown in from the Middle East. We don't know who they are, where they're going. The Border Patrol says there could be literally millions, or 500,000 at least, escaping through. They don't even know who they are. They don't know where they are. And then we've got law enforcement being thwarted. We have governors and district attorneys letting criminals out on the streets. You got to vote our way. Get out there, kid, and do some more.
Oh God! And what's really scary is, and we can touch on this for a second. This is demonic energy that's behind all of this. Very, very demonic energies that are behind pushing all of this to happen.
So right you are, my dear Watson. I got to say clearly. Now you just hit the chord and brought up something very, very true. This little diagram I love to refer to a lot. No matter what your belief and faith is in God, Allah, Jesus, Buddha, Moses, whatever it is, we all believe in something, unless we're atheists, that God is above all creation, right? And what's interesting is they say souls are created up here. And it is believed there are 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions here. This is an Aramaic Hebrew word called absolute. And these are the classes of angels believed to rule it. The next world's down, Braya, is where the waters of creation and many of the worlds get much more dense, they say. Very divine stuff. Again, 49 dimensions, 49 subdimensions. Then you've got the Yetziratic worlds. Now, many people who have studied ancient Judaism, or of course today it's called Kabbalah, but it's really just ancient sacred knowledge. And you have to say it that way too. But anyhow, the bottom line is, there's actually a text to this and several translations that are quite profound. It's called the Sefer Yetzirah, or Sefer Yetzirah, which means the book of formation is really what it means. And this really is almost like a physics manual of the universe par excellence from a spiritual standpoint. And it talks about what space, time, and you could say dimensional reality is. And they claim there could be 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions in each one, which is staggering, way past my comprehension. Well, where am I going with all this? Every society on this planet has some creational story about a war in heaven and God cast spirits down. Of course, in the Judeo-Christian West, we have the Garden of Eden story, right? Adam and Eve, right? The snake, all that, the apple. So Bottom line is, look at the Apple thing on this. So bite out of the apple on your Apple computers. Anyways, I always look at that and go, but anyhow, what's important here is if you go into the Hindu religion, the Chinese religion, the Southeast Asia, all the Southeast Asian countries have some philosophy of a war in heaven, and it was, the spirits were cast down. The Indians in America, the African tribes, everywhere has some kind of a parallel myth like this, the Egyptians, the Babylonians. So where am I going? Well, in the West, they're called Lucifer, Satan, Belial, and Leviathan. Now, usually we get a guy with a suit tie and a microphone telling us about the devil, but it's just a little bit deeper than that, and maybe quite a bit deeper.
It's a lot deeper than that.
So a whole bunch deeper than that one. Yeah, and they say there's 8 beneath that and legions upon legions upon legions beneath that. Well, now we start getting down the rabbit hole that I'm glad you brought up, and that is they actually claim that these guys might be literally incarcerated here, not only just Earth, but they might be forced to be a part of the molecular structure of this particular dimension, right down to the atomic level. And this is very interesting stuff because look at an atom. Protons, electrons, right? See, you got all these balancing forces, positive, negative, day and night. So these guys, in many of the ancient Egyptian and rabbinical texts in Chaldean, they actually speak that life and death is got to have these 4 involved and the legions beneath them. That's very mysterious stuff because, in other words, decay and death, everything on this planet has a beginning and a middle and an end. It's like a 3-act stage play. Shakespeare was much more right than he knew. It is a big stage and we're the actors, right? Yeah. And we're all playing our perception of reality. And these spirits seem to have caused so much trouble throughout history. A good example is you go all the way back, you hear about these magical cults and sacrifices of children at Baal, and even in Israel, all this stuff. It's crazy. It goes back as far back as you want to go. And you look at, some of the modern Satanists, look at Stalin.
It's still going on.
Still going on. Oh my God. I think it's going on potentially now. And here's another interesting thing. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and also even the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction which brought in COVID in 2020, Saturn-Pluto, and the Jupiter-Saturn, which happened at the winter solstice of 220. These are portals. These are literally dimensional portals that get met and opened up. And that's why I think their effects happen. We look at it down here and we say, oh my God, this happened, that happened. So-and-so's doing this political person's doing that.
Right.
But it's almost as though these are spiritual forces vicariously operating through the various players on the chessboard.
Yeah. Oh, clearly. No doubt about it.
We're hearing so much horrible stuff with human trafficking, sacrificial stuff, cannibalism, etc. And people, when you look into this here, I'll show you something that'll really creep you out. Okay, this is
also when someone is attacked or just the day-to-day.
Oh, just the day-to-day is unbelievable. Yeah. Here, I'll show you something. A lot of people don't realize that this is true, but these are grimoires that many secret societies have played with. And I know that for a fact. I've had clients who've been around certain things. I'm not going to mention any names, but do you think a person reading and drawing circles with various different sacred symbols around, summoning spirits? Notice that's a triangle, which, by the way, is 3. 3 is the numerology of Saturn, so it concretizes energy. And they actually do this stuff, believe it or not. This may look like an old, medieval grimoire, but this stuff goes on. Yeah. And these evil spirits love, and I do mean they love, to get people to do stuff. Yeah. C.S. Lewis might have said it best in his text called The Screw Tape Letters. the most delectable thing for a spirit is to consume a soul, a human soul. And this stuff goes on. It's creepy.
Just take that soul over.
It takes the soul over. And this is demonic influence. And people might listen to me and say, oh, well, how can you prove that? Well, you can't. But I'll tell you what, I've actually worked in forensics and I've had people in law enforcement and various things tell me they really had evidence that this kind of stuff goes on in very interesting places. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And if you look around at the energy that's around us, you can pretty much put two and two together.
See, the holy saints and the prophets didn't do grimoires. What they did is they literally had the soul purified enough. We hear the same thing in Christianity. Like Jesus went out, into the desert, took over the devil after 40 days, all this stuff. And we hear the same thing in the rabbinical texts and in the Vedantic too. They just say it differently. And it's interesting. These guys literally are slaves in the creational cycles here. And that's why they hate the human race. They hate us. They literally hate us. They're evil and they're liars and they've been incarcerated. So when you rub that lantern and that GD comes out screwing around with black magic, you're going to have trouble on your hands. And that's why a lot of people in positions of power are really interesting folks. I'm not saying they're all demonic. What I am saying is some of them
are tapped into that.
They're very tapped into it. Yep.
Well, I mean, we're where we're at.
Here's the saving grace. And here I want to leave it with this, because not only is Jupiter going to hit the United States, but do you think these guys would stay incarcerated if there wasn't for the force? They say if the cherubims and the thrones did not chant the permutations of God's name almost like 10,800 times per hour, that the entire universes would vaporize in a nanosecond. So, the thing we got to do is realize that good always prevails over evil. Good sustains creation, or God does, if you want to call it that. So it's really, I think, when we buy into fear, and really allow them to coerce us, because they'll kill you if they can, then we lose. But when we stay strong and we realize that divinity always is the source of everything, then that really makes a big change. They cannot win. They cannot win in the end.
They can't. And also the power of prayer is so important. Always.
You bet.
So important.
I'm glad you brought that up. They actually say we emit out of our third eye chakra elementals right there out of the third eye chakra. And I always love to mention this. Artificial intelligence is going to come into our lives. Anybody who thinks we're not going to see that in the next, we're already seeing it, but we're really going to see it in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be like the Jetsons. You're going to have your robot, cleaning the floor. And what's interesting about that is there's a real disconnect from human consciousness. And I think there has been for a long, long time, because it's all about left brain. What's your IQ? How smart are you? What can you remember?
Where's the love? Well, here we just
that too.
Let it be here.
That too. I'm glad you brought that up. But also we are divine. See, and what's interesting is science can cut off the top of our heads. It can take a probe and make your fingers and toes wiggle and all that happy stuff. But tell me how it is you can have, or anyone can have, an intention to pick up a glass of water or do anything they want to do. How's that comporting into this miraculous machine called our bodies? An organic machine, not a mechanical, an organic living machine. AI will never do what you can do. It can't. It can be programmed to act. And I've talked to a lot of really smart computer people, and they're all saying, well, we can actually make the computer get a field of influence that mimics the personality. It actually learns. It's smart. It's actually torsional waves, they say, that form. That's true.
That's not a soul, though.
That's not a soul. Well, and also it's doing what it's doing because it's programmed to be doing it.
Right.
Even if it's learning, it's still programmed to do it. You pick up a glass of water because you're thirsty and you want to. It does it because it's looking like it should. That would be the appropriate behavior for the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a politician. That's the appropriate giver for the moment.
We see that pretty much every day.
Yeah. See, so that's the point. Is sorry, I didn't mean to burn on the politicians. And I wish George was around right now. Everybody has to listen to George Carlin language complaints. Got to listen to that because he talks about how politicians mince the words, they twist and convolute the human language, and I don't think anybody's better at that than Biden and Harris. But anyways, actually, the rest of them too, Trump too. They all do it. They all do it. That's right. They're all crazy.
They have to do it, or else they won't be there. They have to do it.
That's right. That's exactly right. But back to this AI thing. The only thing we're ever going to take with us is the spiritual essence. We don't even take the ears that are surrounding our brain. We don't think anything, not the clothes, not the money, not anything. So I think we need to keep in that space, when we're in these exceedingly trying times, because we're not our possessions. We're not all this stuff. And it is good to fight, to keep the Constitution and all that, because there's never been another document drafted to my knowledge like that. Do you know anything?
I do not.
I do not either. And what's so interesting is the astrology mirrors this same time when Washington defected from the crown of England and formed the Revolutionary Army. All that was happening as the French and Indian War ended. And now we're in the same boat, but different.
Same boat, so to speak. Yeah.
So to speak, metaphorically, the astrology is very similar to this. It really is. The Roman Empire is believed to have been created somewhere around 30 BC, give or take. The historians got it better than I do, but about then. And the 250-year marker point when Pluto returns to Pluto is when it divided, right? And then the Roman Empire literally dissolved on the second Pluto return, which was just short of 500 years, about 480 something years, something like that. So these Pluto cycles, they can say whatever they want about them. They're amazing. They're amazingly powerful. And again, it's like it says in the Psalms, the planets may be the fingers of God or divinity working on creation, because it really seems to be.
We'll talk about powerful documents. The Psalms.
Oh God, they're amazing.
Most powerful.
They're amazing. Yeah, they really, truly are. Well, see, they're ciphers and codes. These are ciphers. This is just a couple things I put up, but there are actually many ciphers and codes called Zeraf. There's Tamira. There's Gematria. There's all these different numerological secrets that were embedded in the ancient Psalms. People might not know this. You know that some of the Psalms may be up to 4,000 years old. Psalm 91 is believed to be, at best guess, about 18 to 1900 BC. No one really knows. If that's true, that's pushing 4,000 years. And that's at best guess. Again, we don't have any way to carbon date stuff like that.
Yeah, very powerful. We were talking about this just the other day, how I was telling you how my mom was always reading the Psalms, and very, very powerful. Very powerful.
One of the profound texts is called the Shemush Tehillim.
Yeah.
Shemush Tehillim is the secrets of the Psalms. It's kind of the method of the Psalms. And there's been many treatises put out about the Psalms, but they are actually chanted hymns, and they have codes within them. And the verses mean what they mean, but they also have encrypted angels inside of that in codes. And this is why people would scan the Aramaic or Hebrew both from left to right and right to left and then back again. Right. And they would recite also the angel that's in it. The Shemush Tehillim has stuff like this. It's really profound. And you're lucky you have that copy, because I've got that too.
I am, because you can't
get it since COVID.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
It'll come back, because very, very, very precious book.
Yeah. I think it is out there in PDF format. I have other versions of it. That's profound. It's really, really profound. And same thing. Well, that's one of the things I do with angel pendants when I do the gems. I literally carve the name of, they say when we draw first breath, they say the guardian angel ties the spirit, psyche, and soul to the embryo at conception by silver cord. And when we exit the womb after the period of gestation, which for most humans is about 9 months, that angel ties the spirit, psyche, and soul to the body at first breath. And they claim that the angel actually waits to all the stuff down here on earth, logistically, like mom's water breaks, you got to get her to the hospital, right? Or there she has the baby on the floor or whatever she does. So, I mean, it's pretty traumatic when a baby is being born. It's a big deal. And when that child comes out, they actually say the celestial influences at that location on the sphere of the earth, or if you're a flat earther, at that point on the earth, exactly matches the karmic influences of the soul's journey. So the astrology is not us. It's actually maybe us in reverse. It's really, in other words, our soul may have been born at that celestial influenced time in order to experience what we did. And think about parents. My God, there's never a time we have less free will than the parents we're born to.
Right. No, we don't. And isn't it that same angel that then takes us at last breath?
That's exactly right. That's actually contained in a text. If anybody wants to get it, it's called the Sefer HaHaggadah, which means the ancient book of legends of the soul. So it's for very, very interesting stuff. And people do call it different things, but that's the general gist of it. A profound text. And, again, anyone who has, the bearded men in Rome threw the doctrines of reincarnation in the bottom of the Vatican or wherever they did, they lit them on fire, somewhere around the 1st to the 3rd century. And, it's really a shame because ancient Christianity did have an edge. Judaism clearly does. And so does most other religions on this planet. Yeah. And, the you're all sinners and going to hell doesn't cut it. If you give us $100, we get you a good seat in hell. But it's really much deeper than that. And that's why I really was attracted to Nadi and Vedic astrology. Again, Nadi and or Vedic astrology is kind of Vedic astrology is kind of a pop term. Its real name is actually referred to as Jyotisha. Jyotisha actually means the science of the light of the soul. And I really believe that it is. And this etheric energy follows us from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And this also happens to women too.
Really? Does it?
Well, they always have these bearded men, the men in the pictures. Absolutely, it happens to women. It does. I think it happens to all many beings. Different waves of all beings, animals.
All beings, animals. Yeah. There's a soul there.
They even say there's the mineral and plant kingdoms.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're all here experiencing, right? Constantly. Krishnamurti used to talk about that. It's just experience after experience. The experience is the experiencer, is what he used to say. And it's so true because it really is just like that.
It is. Well, that's exactly right. And I would say this, that for some reason, the reincarnational process is very attractive to the evil spirits. They want to keep bringing us back. They pull in off the energy. They intertwine with it. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to intertwine enough with it to actually pull the soul into this realm with them. Wow. And I'm not saying the earth is a bad place, but there's some fairly compelling information about that in the ancient texts that really, truly, the earth, I call it the soul cauldron. I really do, because I think it is.
Well, I've already put my request in to please return as an angel. Let me get this all done in this last lifetime, because it's tough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of the texts that is really amazing about that is people can purchase this text. It's called the Sha'arei HaGilgam. The Sha'arei HaGilgam is a strange word. Sha'ar or Sha'arei means gates or gate. And this is it right here. And the Sha'arei HaGilgam is the gates of reincarnations or recyclings of the souls. And This is a profound text that supports many of the things that the Vedantic scriptures also say exactly synonymously. It's just said different ways. The Upanishads, the Rig Veda, the Vedas, the Yajur Veda, all these say the same thing. This is profound, profound stuff. I really have to say, if the religions really, in my opinion, in some ways, not all of them, but some of them have really failed by not elucidating this stuff as much as they could, because the goal here is to raise the vibration of consciousness. Not to create more war, more more acquisition of materialistic mindsets. Not that money and materialism isn't necessary and good, but on the other hand, it's so prevalent that people will do anything to each other. I mean, they say the biggest profession that's growing right now is the legal profession. And that's because it's the new machete. Let's just go get them, sue them, make up all kinds of stuff and torture them. It's becoming a sport, the legal industry. It really is.
Well, it's interesting when people do experience, when someone has the experience of those material things being taken away, what are you left with, right? You're left with you, and you got to look at that, and you better do it before that happens.
That's a really good point.
You should just get in now when you can.
You're so exactly right. I love that you brought that up.
It's just so important.
It is, and you said it best just now. When I find this all the time, and I'm really blessed to do readings with people on a regular basis daily. And I see these poor people, some of them who have really challenged, compromised positions, children with autism or really challenging health issues or et cetera, et cetera. It's only then we realize, I don't care how much money you got, you're not going to buy health. You cannot buy longevity. And, the sooner we all realize that we're all just sojourners in this beautiful planet Earth, and look at right now. I was just amazed at one of the guys, talking to Putin, said, "Well, that general should have won, and let's strip him of everything, and now let's start using nukes." Oh, there you go. That's the Hatfields and McCoys. So what happens is, where does this end? Right. It ends in destruction, right? Or in death. That's where it ends. And the spirits love this stuff. I mean, I think Hitler killed about 11 million people. Stalin killed about, it's a guesstimate, I think it's 25 or 35 million. You can read it on the internet. And Mao, the guy on the Chinese currency right now, killed like close to 75 million. And that's a guesstimate. Nobody really, 75 million people. Yeah. And I love it when these communists say, well, you know what? It's getting too expensive to go in and kill them. So let's just starve them out.
I mean, you can't.
Nice. So nothing's new. Now it can be done with the push of a button. And, I think divine intervention has saved us more than once on nuclear stuff. And it just might again. Yeah.
Well, we can talk about this next time, but you have spoken about the year 2040, right?
Yeah.
In terms of there being a shift.
Yep. And I really think, a lot, I don't want to dispute other people on the internet because everybody's out there with an opinion. Everybody thinks there's a lot of people saying we're in the Aquarian age. I really don't buy that one. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that's going to be a lot closer to a couple hundred years from now, very close to when the Hebrew calendar hits 6,000, which is when it ends. Mm-hmm. And I really think that might be accurate because we certainly don't seem like the Aquarian age yet, do we? I mean, look around, folks. Does it seem like the Aquarian age? Yeah. And I think, it's really a shame what's going on right now with the United States. Speaking of George Washington, he was such an amazing person. I really like studying the history of him. And I have to say, this country was founded on some of the most amazing principles. And it truly, truly was. When you think about what is happening here with the subversion of the Constitution, and again, what I mentioned earlier, the Sati Sate, the progressions in Nadi astrology on the United States, this is a time when it's really going to bend the metal of this country and really push the limits here. Yeah. And, there's no other country that ever had a document like the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And it's really a miraculous document. And I don't care what they say. I'm not saying that certain secret societies haven't been infiltrated, but at least the founders of this country, no matter what you want to say about the Masons, at least that document was really a really divine document.
Yeah.
Even George Washington at 11 years old inherited all these slaves. And, you were telling me about his wife was quite different. But George Washington released and also took care of a lot of them after it was in his will.
Well, it wasn't in hers, but it was.
It wasn't hers, right? The framers really, when you really read something that was written almost 50 years ago now, it's quite profound. Yeah. And it holds some really good tenets to human nature.
Yeah. There are a lot of good people here. A lot.
There's a lot of great people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've actually talked to guys in the military. I've heard this for years where they've heard light orbs around installations and or they've seen light orbs and extraterrestrial or they call it now, aerial phenomena. It used to be called UFOs, right? So,
aerial phenomena.
Yeah, aerial phenomena, right? Yeah. So it's all phenomena. So the bottom line is, it's interesting because a lot of them have said the devices and certain weaponry didn't work afterwards. So something is diffusing,
right.
The possibility of this happening. So we'll see. I have faith that no matter what, I think we're about to see some divine intervention, some pretty intense stuff with these eclipses, or the eclipse coming up. We actually have a couple coming up because you have the new and the full, but very powerful, very, very powerful stuff. We're going to see where this all goes. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for answering my questions.
Yeah.
Spreading all the what the astrology has to say, sharing it with everyone.
Right.
I'm excited to come back and talk some more.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. All right. My camera went off, but there I'm back. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening, and check us out next time.